Sand exploded in her face as hooves pounded the sun-baked main street of Dry Creek. She ducked behind the wheel of a toppled wagon, feeling the wood bite into her palms. Bullets kicked up dust around her boots. The air vibrated with the metallic snap of gunfire and the sharp whinny of terrified horses. "Move!" A rough voice barked from the opposite side of the street. A man's hat tipped low, shadowing his eyes, revolver raised, glinting in the dying sun. Dust clung to his coat, whipped by the desert wind like a shroud. She rolled forward, kicking sand into the boots of the nearest rider, then vaulted onto a barrel, feeling the dry wood splinter beneath her weight. Another shot cracked. The bullet shredded the rim of the barrel, sending wood shards into her sleeve. Her pulse hammered. A third man appeared, sneaking through the shadow of the saloon. His boots clinked against the wooden boards, a soft, deadly rhythm that made her teeth clench. She waited, breath shallow, senses stretched taut like a drawn bow. Her hand hovered near the small steel she carried, hidden beneath her long coat. The boy behind the livery barrels yelped, stumbling over a rope. The men's heads turned. That was all she needed. She pivoted, letting momentum fling her off the barrel. Fingers found a gun, and with one precise motion, she fired. The man staggered, hat tumbling to the dirt. Dust rose around him, masking the flash of her next move. Another shot rang out, hitting the corner of a building instead of its intended mark. She ducked, feeling the heat of the gun smoke on her skin. The wind carried the acrid scent of gunpowder into her nostrils, stinging her eyes. A horse's scream cut through the chaos. The boy froze, terror straining every muscle in his small frame. She locked eyes with him for a fraction of a second, then turned back to the remaining men. They were closing in, slow and methodical, but confident. Overconfidence was their first mistake. Her heart raced, but her mind was sharp. Every step, every twitch was calculated. She slid along the shadowed edge of the street, heels crunching against the grit, eyes darting to find cover. A wagon wheel spun uselessly in her path. She leapt over it, feeling the tension coil in her muscles, and landed silently behind the overturned barrel of flour. "Looks like we got ourselves a stubborn one," a new voice called out. A fourth man emerged from the saloon doors, twin revolvers glinting. The sun caught the metal and turned it into fire in her eyes. She didn't flinch. Instead, she shifted her weight, letting the barrel shield her as she prepared to move again. Her fingers brushed the trigger. The world narrowed. The smell of dust, sweat, and leather, the pounding of hooves, the hiss of bullets cutting air, the boy's shallow breaths. The first man regained his balance and raised his gun. Time slowed. She fired. The bullet struck the brim of his hat, snapping it from his head. His shocked glance met hers for the briefest instant. That was enough. The fourth man charged, boots pounding, guns raised. She rolled to the side, the world a blur of tan dust and harsh shadows. Her hand found steel, and with a fluid motion honed by necessity, she fired twice. Both men dropped, cries strangled by the dirt and wind. From above, a plank creaked. She looked up and saw the rope ladder dangling from the balcony. Without hesitation, she grabbed it, swinging her body upward, boots kicking sand into the faces of any who dared approach. Her coat flared behind her, a dark banner against the orange sky. A sharp whistle cut through the chaos. She froze. The wind carried it, twisting it into something almost human. And then she heard the whisper, soft, deliberate, chilling, "I'm not clean." The word struck harder than any bullet. Her body tensed, every nerve alive. Shadows shifted along the walls of the buildings, hiding more than just men. She felt it in her bones, the truth of what had been said. Danger had a scent, and it had changed. The final man hesitated at the edge of the street, eyes wide, hands trembling on the gun. Pride, arrogance, and now fear battled across his face. He lunged, thinking she was vulnerable, thinking he had the upper hand. She waited, a heartbeat, 2, 3, and then movement. Swift, almost imperceptible. The gun rose. Time fractured. The shot cracked. The man's world ended in a cloud of dust and disbelief. The street went quiet. The boy scrambled toward her, eyes wide, mouth open. but she shook her head. Words were unnecessary. The air still thrummed with danger, but the immediate threat had passed. Above, the sun bled red along the horizon, casting long shadows across the town. Her chest heaved, revolver still warm in her grip. She looked down the empty street, hearing only the distant echo of retreating hooves. And for the first time since the fight began, she allowed herself a slow, controlled breath. Dry Creek had seen only a glimpse of her. It had no idea what lingered beneath the calm exterior. The whisper echoed in her memory as she climbed to the balcony, peering down into the empty street. Asterisk, I'm not clean. Asterisk, dust settled around her like a curtain. The boy's small hand found hers. She held it tightly, feeling the weight of what had just occurred. The story of this day was far from over, and the town would remember her, not as a widow, not as a survivor, but as someone who had changed the rules of the game in the blink of an eye. The sun dipped lower, shadows swallowing. The wind howled through the canyon, carrying the faint echo of gunfire from the edge of Dry Creek. She crouched behind a boulder, fingers tracing the smooth steel of her revolver, heart still hammering from the chaos that had erupted moments before. Dust swirled around her boots, sticking to the sweat on her palms. A rattling sound, loose chains from the abandoned mine shaft, jerked her attention. She rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the shadow of a falling rock. Her eyes darted along the canyon wall, scanning for movement. Somewhere a coyote yipped, but it sounded too close, too deliberate. Someone was watching. A sudden voice broke the tension. You think hiding behind stones can save you? It wasn't the bandits from town. This was softer, older, almost intimate. A memory clawed at the edge of her mind, sharp as a knife. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from remembrance. The desert had taught her many lessons. The cruelty of men, the silence of betrayal, the sting of loss. She had survived it all, but the echo never left. Dust in her lungs, blood on her hands, the smell of burning timber. Each detail etched into her memory. A horse's hooves clattered in the distance. She stayed low, the gun steady. The figure approaching was masked by a cloud of dust, but she recognized the gait, the slow, careful precision of someone trained. Memories of the past flickered. Nights spent dodging bullets, lessons learned in the quiet hours before dawn, whispers of a life she'd been forced to abandon. Suddenly, a man emerged from behind a rock, revolver raised. He didn't know she was already anticipating him. She fired once, the bullet snapping a rifle from his hands, sending it skittering into the dirt. He fell, cursing through clenched teeth, and the dust swallowed his retreat. She exhaled slowly, letting the moment stretch, tasting the tension like bitter coffee on her tongue. The canyon seemed to close in around her, the jagged rocks pressing shadows against the setting sun. Every movement, every sound, every shifting dust cloud carried a warning. She had walked these paths before in memory and nightmare, and now the paths had returned to meet her. A sharp metallic click made her spin. Another gun barrel gleamed, aimed directly at her chest from a ledge above. She froze, eyes locking with the stranger, muscles coiled. The weight of all that had come before pressed down. The betrayals, the loss, the silent promises of vengeance. A whisper brushed against her ear, almost drowned by the wind. You left, but you never really left. She reacted without hesitation, rolling to the side, firing at the rock above her to create a spark of distraction. Loose pebbles tumbled down, clattering against the canyon floor. The man lost his balance for a heartbeat. That was all she needed. With a swift movement honed by years of survival, she disarmed him, letting gravity do the rest. He tumbled down, hitting the ground hard, dust and blood mixing in a grim reminder how easily life could end here. The boy from Dry Creek stumbled into view, eyes wide, clutching his hat to his chest. He froze, staring at her as if seeing a ghost. She shook her head, signaling him to stay low. Her grip on the revolver never faltered. Every sense was sharp, every nerve ready. From the shadows came a faint laugh, a cruel reminder of what had brought her here. Faces she thought long gone flickered in her mind. Friends who had fallen to desert thieves, lovers who had vanished without a trace, all stitched into the tapestry of her life. Every loss had trained her for this exact moment. Every scar gave her leverage. The canyon floor shifted beneath the approaching footsteps of another figure. She didn't flinch. She had danced this dance before. Memories surged forward. Night raids, whispered warnings, the sound of someone breathing next to a body in the dark. She remembered the feel of cold steel press against her palm, the sting of gunpowder in her eyes, the taste of sand and sweat and fear. A horse neighed suddenly to her left. Reflex took over. She pivoted, swinging her revolver in a fluid motion. A shot cracked and the horse bolted, kicking dust into the approaching threat's eyes. He cursed, blinded by sand, and she pressed forward, using the terrain to her advantage, ducking behind rocks, letting shadows conceal her movement. Another voice shouted from above, "You can't keep running." A gun clicked, but she had already moved. Her hand found the cliff wall, fingertips scraping rough stone as she climbed a narrow incline, using every ounce of strength to rise above the line of fire. Each step brought her closer to leverage, to vantage, to control. The canyon seemed alive with memory, echoing each shot, each breath, each heartbeat. She was no longer simply reacting. She was orchestrating, drawing on years of unseen experience. The desert had carved her into something unrecognizable to anyone who thought they knew her. From the highest rock, she took aim at the nearest figure. Her breathing slowed, precise, controlled. She fired, and the bullet struck true. He went down, stunned, clutching his arm. The boy's gas was caught in the wind, swallowed by the roar of the canyon. She paused, chest heaving, eyes scanning every shadow, every crevice. The whispers of the past were louder here than anywhere else. The losses, the betrayals, the quiet moment of courage that no one had ever witnessed. She felt each one now, guiding her movements, sharpening her reflexes, reinforcing her resolve. Then she heard again, almost drowned by the rustle of dry leaves. Asterisk, I'm not clean. Asterisk. The word struck differently this time, more personal, more raw. Not a threat, not a warning, an acknowledgement. She understood it fully now. Every scar, every memory, every shadow of her past had led to this moment. The desert, the canyon, Dry Creek, they had all been waiting for her to claim what had always been hers. Control, justice, survival. She drew a deep breath, feeling the weight of her hidden strength settle into her bones. The shadows of the past were no longer a threat. They were her allies, each memory a weapon, each loss a teacher. And as the sun dipped low behind jagged cliffs, she knew the next steps would not be simply survival. They would be reckoning. The canyon held its breath, and so did she. Continue with Section 3? The wind tore through the canyon like a living thing, carrying the acrid sting of smoke from the burning barn on Dry Creek's edge. Horses whinnied, hooves clattering against the dirt as riders tore down the main street. She crouched behind a fallen telegraph post, revolver in hand, eyes scanning every shadow, every ripple of dust. A figure emerged in the haze, hat tipped low, boots crunching over gravel, gun glinting in the dying sun. He moved with precision, each step deliberate, as if he had rehearsed this moment for months. Another shot cracked nearby, sending a spray of dirt at her feet. She felt the heat, smelled gunpowder, tasted grit on her tongue. The boy from earlier ducked behind a crate, trembling, eyes wide. She gave a quick nod. Stay low, stay alive. Her own chest heaved, but her movements remained controlled. Every fiber of her being was alert, every sense stretched taut. From the rooftops, another shadow dropped, a second gunman, sliding silently down ropes to flank her. She pivoted, firing once, the bullet singing past his shoulder, sending him stumbling into the dust. He recovered quickly, cursing under his breath, guns ready again. She didn't flinch. The chaos of Dry Creek was nothing new. The smell of sweat, leather, and gunpowder was a language she spoke fluently. Her hands moved on instinct, revolvers swinging in perfect rhythm with the pounding hooves and screaming horses. A sudden shout rang out from the alley. She's got the boy. Don't let her escape. The men coordinated, their movements tightening like a noose. She pressed against the shadowed wall, listening to the rhythm of their steps, the scrape of boots, the click of gun hammers. Each sound told her where they were, how many and how fast. She sprinted, rolling past overturned barrels, kicking a crate into one approaching gunman. He stumbled, arms flailing, and she slipped past, hair whipping across her face. The wind caught it, blinding her for a heartbeat. But she didn't falter. Behind her, the boy stumbled, and she grabbed his hand, yanking him forward. From a corner of her eye, she caught a glint of steel. The leader, taller than the rest, moving like a predator. His shadow stretched across the street, swallowing the last of the light. She pressed herself against the post, letting dust coat her face, breathing shallow, every nerve screaming. A horse reared nearby, and she used the moment to slide down the opposite side of the post, revolver aimed. Bang! The lead man froze, hand lifting instinctively to shield his chest. Bang! Another shot, grazing his arm. Pain flashed across his face, but his resolve didn't waver. He adjusted, eyes cold, calculating. The canyon beyond the town seemed to close in, cliffs pressing shadows into every alley and corner. The wind carried voices, whispers, the memory of every loss and betrayal that had shaped her. She had learned the terrain, the tricks, the silent spaces where life and death hung in balance. Every step she took was a chess move, every shot a calculated risk. A sudden sound above, metal scraping wood, made her whip her head back. From the balcony, another enemy aimed down, revolver raised. She ducked just in time, a bullet shattering the post behind her. Splinter sprayed, a sharp sting on her arm. Without hesitation, she fired upward. The man cursed, losing his grip, sliding back toward the balcony rail. The boy yelped, stumbling, and she grabbed him, pulling him behind a low wall. "Stay close," she hissed, voice harsh but controlled. The weight of the world pressed on her shoulders, but she could carry it. She always could. From the dust, another figure charged, guns drawn. Her eyes narrowed. She pivoted, letting gravity and momentum guide her. The shot cracked, dust exploded at the man's boots, and she rolled, letting the recoil spin her toward the next threat. Gunfire erupted across the street, echoing off the wooden buildings. Windows shattered, glass raining like bullets themselves. Horses screamed, throwing their riders into panic. She could smell fear as keenly as gunpowder, taste it in the wind that whipped around her. A whisper, almost drowned by the chaos, reached her ears. Asterisk, you think you can outrun what's coming? Asterisk, she froze for a heartbeat, then smiled faintly. Not outrun. Not this time. She was ready. From the roof of the general store, the leader's silhouette shifted. He drew a pistol, aimed carefully, and fired. She felt the heat of the bullet as it ricocheted off a nearby post. She ducked, firing again, the shot ringing true, grazing his leg. He cursed, hopping backward, but did not fall. The wind kicked up, carrying dust and sand in spiraling clouds. Every figure, every shadow, every motion was alive with intent, but she moved through them like a phantom. She was no longer just reacting. She was orchestrating, using the environment to chaos and her instincts as weapons. The boy clutched her hand, panting, trying to keep pace. She adjusted, letting him stay just behind her, shielded by her own movements. Her revolver never wavered, eyes scanning, listening, calculating every heartbeat, every breath. From across the street, a door slammed, and a new figure emerged, a gunman she hadn't anticipated. He raised his weapon, but her finger tightened on the trigger. One shot, precise and controlled, sent him staggering into the dust. The leader cursed, retreating a step, realizing she was more than he had accounted for. Every move she had made, every shot fired, every instinct relied upon was proof. The woman before him was not merely surviving. She was mastering the storm. The sun dipped lower, burning red behind the canyon walls, painting the dust in streaks of gold and fire. Shadows grew long, twisting around corners and doorways, carrying with them the weight of what was to come. She exhaled, steady, revolver still warm, senses sharp. The storm was gathering, not just in the sky, but in the hearts and hands of those who thought to challenge her. She was ready, and when it broke, they would discover the truth. And somewhere, unseen but inevitable, the final reckoning waited. Dust whipped across the main street of Dry Creek, blinding and choking all at once. Horses screamed in panic, kicking up clouds of grit that swirled like ghosts around the buildings. She crouched behind the smashed saloon doors, revolver in hand, eyes scanning every shadow. Every heartbeat echoed in her ears like a drum. The leader's silhouette appeared at the far end of the street, tall, wide-brimmed hat tipped low, pistol gleaming in the dying light. Behind him, his men fanned out, boots crunching on the dry dirt, dust clouds trailing like dark smoke. Every step they took radiated confidence, arrogance, and deadly intent. Her gaze flicked to the boy crouched behind a barrel, eyes wide with fear. She gave him a sharp nod. Stay down. Then, turning back to the approaching threat, her fingers tightened on the grip of her revolver. Time slowed. She felt the rhythm of the street, the pulse of the town, the anticipation of every figure moving toward her. From the corner of the saloon, a shot rang out. Sparks flew where bullet met wood. She rolled, kicked up dust, and fired in return. A man went down, clutching his chest, eyes wide with surprise. Another moved, but she was already sliding along the shadowed edge, revolver aimed, every motion fluid, deliberate. The leader cursed under his breath. He raised his pistol, aiming straight at her. The world narrowed, the glint of metal, the flash of sun, the sharp scent of gunpowder, the heat from the barrel brushing her cheek. She fired once, twice, precise calculated, each shot finding its mark. He stumbled, but did not fall. Pride kept him upright, but the first crack in his armor had appeared. She moved forward, rolling past debris, kicking up splinters of wood and stone, dust clinging to sweat-streaked skin. Her eyes never left him, every muscle coiled for the moment she had been waiting for. A rope snapped above her, another adversary descending from the balcony. She ducked instinctively, fired a quick shot, and the figure tumbled back into the dust, arms flailing. The chaos of the street was a symphony, and she was conducting every note. The boy gasped, clutching her sleeve. "Miss, what are you?" She cut him a sharp glance. No time for words. Survival demanded focus. From behind the post office, another man emerged, gun drawn, aiming to flank her. She pivoted, fired twice. He went down, rolling into the dirt with a scream cut short by sand and smoke. The sound of boots on wood, hooves on dirt, and gun hammers clicking filled the canyon of the street like thunder rolling over cliffs. Then the leader lunged forward, revolver raised, eyes locked on hers. She dropped low, spinning to the side, letting her body brush along the edge of a wagon. Her fingers squeezed the trigger. 2 shots rang out. He staggered, catching himself on the wheel, hat flying from his head. Dust coated him, mixing with sweat and blood. He was human, but no longer untouchable. The wind carried a whisper across the street, soft, deliberate. Asterisk, I'm not clean. Asterisk. She froze, letting the words sink in for a heartbeat, then smiled faintly. They had underestimated her. Not just her resolve, her past, her hidden skills, the life she had forged in shadows of loss and survival. The battlefield of Dry Creek had just become her stage. He raised his pistol again, more cautious now. Pride still glimmered in his eyes, but fear flickered beneath it. The streets themselves seemed to hold their breath as she slowly rose from cover. The boy pressed safely behind her. Her coat flared, dust clinging to her boots, revolver steady. Time fractured. She moved with unnatural speed, pivoting, firing, disarming. Bullets tore through wood and stone. Each shot precise, each movement revealing years of unseen experience. The leader tried to anticipate, to outmaneuver her, but she was already 3 steps ahead. The battlefield bent to her will. The boy whispered, trembling, "Miss, who are you?" Her lips curved faintly. "Someone you don't forget," she said. From the rooftops, shadows shifted, another wave of men moving to close in. She fired, bullets snapping, ricocheting, finding cracks in walls and hitting targets with deadly intent. Every adversary that thought themselves a match fell like dominoes. The leader now stood alone, realization in his eyes. He had not faced a widow, not a survivor. He had faced a legend forged in grief, sharpened by loss, perfected in silence. She advanced, revolver steady, Every step a testament to the trials that had carved her into this weapon of justice. A final shot rang out. The leader stumbled, dropped his pistol, clutching his chest. Dust and blood mingled at his boots. He fell to his knees, eyes wide, not with surprise, but acknowledgement. She had arrived, not as a victim, not as prey, but as a reckoning. The wind swept through the street, carrying the echoes of gunfire and dust. The boy stepped forward cautiously, eyes searching hers. She nodded, letting him see that the battle was over, but the story, the legend, would endure. The sun dipped below the canyon, casting long shadows across Dry Creek. She stood amidst the debris, revolver still warm, eyes sharp, body steady. Every scar, every loss, every whispered warning had led to this moment. She was not just surviving. She was the storm that had finally broken over the town, the shadow that had claimed its reckoning. And somewhere in the desert beyond, the whispers would tell her tale of the woman who emerged in the shadows, who moved like wind and fire, who carried the weight of the past into a legendary showdown and left Dry Creek forever changed. She looked down at the boy, hands still gripping hers. "Let's go home," she said. But even as they walked, the echo of gunfire and whispers of the past lingered. She was alive, unbroken, and the frontier had learned a truth it would never forget. Some legends were carved from grief, honed by survival, and unveiled only when the storm was ready to strike.